Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Al Gore here with us. Al, you coming here is like a historic and sentimental homecoming for us at India Today. You delivered the gala dinner address for the first India Today Conclave 6 years ago in 2002. India has come a long way since. We in India Today have also come a long way since. And you, Al, haven't done too badly yourself. You sported a beard. You sported a beard then, and I recall you began your speech by saying, "My name is Al Gore. I used to be the next President of the United States." Well, Al, looking at the divisive Democratic primaries, maybe you should rethink your recent decision not to be the next President of the United States. I can even give you a slogan, if you intend to stand. It's the planet, stupid. All of us here have heard about the phoenix, the legendary mythological bird of fire, which according to one account lived 500 years, burned to ashes on a pyre, and rose alive from the ashes to live again. The bird was also said to regenerate when hurt or wounded by a foe, and was invincible. In Christian literature, it represented resurrection, immortality, and life after death. Today, seeing you here and looking at what you have achieved in the short span since the last time you spoke, Al, you're like the phoenix who has risen from the ashes. Actually, you have risen from the ashes in your new reincarnation to follow your new karma, which is to save the world from itself. What can be more important? And as you know, we Hindus believe in reincarnation. And since you have been reincarnated, I'm sure you're now a Hindu. And like a good Hindu, you will fulfill your karma. And let you be the inspiration for a global dharma. After all, which human being, burned unfairly at the stake of an election folly, denying him the most important and powerful job in the world, would overcome that disappointment and trauma and reinvent himself to become a 21st century Messiah? Be awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace, win an Oscar, and capture the imagination of the entire globe. None that I know of. You correctly described your transformation with an old saying, "What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger." I remember reading what a friend of yours told you after watching you crisscross the globe, log countless air miles, and work so hard at getting your message across. He said, "Al, why don't you take a break and run for president?" Well, that may not be the same as being the unelected preserver of an endangered planet. Howard Gardner, one of the world's most accomplished psychologists and currently professor of Harvard University, who has analyzed the anatomy of leadership in one of his books, says, and I quote, "Leaders achieve their effectiveness chiefly through the stories they relate. By far the rarest individual is the visionary leader. Not content to relate a current story or to reactivate a story drawn from a remote or recent past, the individual creates a new story, one not known to most individuals before, and achieves a measure of success in conveying the story effectively. Gardner says that any century there would be only one or two effective leaders who are genuine visionaries. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have the rare privilege of being in the company of one, Mr. Al Gore. After all, what he has done in bringing awareness about the dangers of climate change is a story that has been narrated so effectively that he has converted us all into believers. Let me confess, Al, that before I saw your Oscar-winning film, The Inconvenient Truth, anything I read on climate change, with all the scientific gobbledygook, gave me what we call in our profession, me-glow, my eyes glazed over. And like most people, I thought it wouldn't happen, at least not in the near future. Your conviction brought an intimacy and immediacy to an issue that is no longer a piece of science fiction. But it's happening now and happening all around us. And as you said in your Nobel Prize acceptance speech, and I quote, "The catastrophe now threatening us is unprecedented. And we often confuse the unprecedented with the improbable." After I saw your documentary, my whole perspective changed, as I believe it did for millions of people around the world. The Inconvenient Truth is one of the highest grosser for documentaries in recent times, earning over $50 million with 1.5 million DVDs copies sold already. If genius is described as the ability to reduce the complex to the simple, then your work on climate change is pure genius. President Clinton who inaugurated this year's conclave once said, "Make climate change as sexy to the world as the Man on the Moon event of the 60s. You obviously have done that. Sexier is the message as well as the messenger today. I think your most important achievement is that you have made it a moral issue that touches every single person on earth. As you put it simply, and I quote, "The earth is our only home, and that is what is at stake. Our ability to live on planet Earth, to have a future as a civilization. The choice is ours, the responsibility is ours, the future is ours." And you brought home the urgency when you quoted Martin Luther King's word and said, "We are confronted with the fierce emergency of now. That tomorrow is today." The theme of this conclave is leadership. And by all accounts, most leaders haven't still got the alarm bells ringing in their ears. And I must quote again Mr. Gore's marvelous Nobel Prize speech, and I recommend all of you to read it on the net. It is one of the finest. In that speech, he equates the leaders who don't get it about global warming in Winston Churchill's words about the leaders who ignored the threat of Hitler. And this is what Winston Churchill said. "They go in strange paradox, decided only to be undecided, resolved to be irresolute, adamant for drift, solid for fluidity, all-powerful to be impotent." Great words. I feel it's a duty for all of us as citizens to give a wake-up call to our leaders. You'd be happy to know that Mr. Gore has already started the process by having a session with our parliamentarians yesterday. I hope it makes a real difference. Al, you are a rock star today in your own right. I would like to quote what a rock star and a humanitarian Bono had written recently about you. And I quote, "Al Gore is the kind of leader these times require, not as president. God and the Electoral College have given him a different job. As it happens, Al is at work repositioning his country from the inside out as a leader in clean energy. And along the way, restoring faith in the U.S. as a moral powerhouse that can lead a great global spiritual revival as the temperatures rise. The theme of the conclave is leadership for the 21st century. Clearly, you're a shining example of our theme. A person who has provided leadership for, excuse the expression, the burning issue of the 21st century. So inviting you as our gala dinner speaker, even if I say so myself, was a brilliant choice. I now invite Mr. Al Gore to deliver his keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arun. That was really very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arun. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the warmth of your welcome. I don't think I've ever in my life received so many compliments in a concentrated period of time. I have this new gadget. It's a battery-powered hubris alarm, and it's set on vibrate. It was going crazy over there during that introduction. But thank you very much, and congratulations on the success of India Today. And by the way, thank you for India Today's leadership on the issue of the climate crisis. I deeply appreciate the vision and leadership that you and your colleagues have provided. And also to Mohini Buhalar, the Conclave Director, thank you so much. To all of the leaders of the India Today group, thank you. To my dear friend and longtime colleague, Dr. Rajendra K. Pachari, the leader of the IPCC, and Mrs. Saroj Pachari, thank you both. What a joy it was for my wife Tipper and me to be with Dr. and Mrs. Pachari in Oslo, and what an honor it is, in my opinion, for India to be home to the individual who leads the global scientific effort to clarify the facts about the climate crisis. I take Dr. Pachari and his colleagues' work and put a bow on it. That's what I do. And I'm deeply indebted and grateful for the opportunity to be together again. You made reference to my comment some 6 years back when I was here that I used to be the next president. People laughed. I don't think that's funny. Put yourselves in my position. I flew on Air Force 2 for 8 years. Now I have to take off my shoes to get on an airplane. Let me just share with you one brief story that happened not long after I was here at this conclave. I mean, this conclave, let me tell you, 6 years ago, it wasn't quite as big a deal as it is now. It was a big deal then, but it has grown, and it has become so much better known and so widely respected, and I congratulate you. But not long after I was here, I was with my wife, Tipper, driving from our home in Nashville, Tennessee, to a small farm that we have about an hour to the east. And we were driving ourselves. I know that sounds like a little thing to most of you. But I looked in the rearview mirror, and on this occasion, it just suddenly hit me. There was no motorcade back there. You've heard of phantom limb pain? This was a rented Ford Taurus. And it was close to dinner time, so we got off the superhighway and looked for a place to eat. And we found a small restaurant called Shoney's. Now, in the United States, Shoney's is a low-cost family restaurant chain. And we walked in and sat down at the booth, and the waitress came over and made a big commotion over Tipper, and then took our order and went to the couple in the booth next to us, and she lowered her voice so much I had to really strain to hear what she was saying. And she said, "Yes, that's former Vice President Al Gore and his wife Tipper." And the man said, "He's come down a long way, hasn't he?" And it was an epiphany, one of several. The very next day, though, this is a true story, I flew to Africa, to the nation of Nigeria, to give a speech on energy policy. And I began my speech by telling that story that had just happened the day before, and I told it in terms almost identical to the ones that I have used here. Tipper and I were driving ourselves, Shoney's low-cost family restaurant chain, what the man said. And the audience laughed, and I went on to give my speech, and then went back to the airport to fly back to the United States. And I fell asleep on the plane until in the middle of the night, we landed on the Azores Islands for refueling. And I woke up, and they opened the door and let some fresh air in, and I walked out onto the platform, and to my surprise, there was a man running toward the plane across the runway, waving a piece of paper and yelling, "Call Washington! Call Washington!" And I thought to myself, here we are, it's the middle of the night, we're in the middle of the Atlantic, what in the world could be wrong in Washington? And then I remembered it could be a lot of things. And but what it turned out to be was that one of the wire service reporters in Nigeria had already written a story about my speech there that had already been printed in newspapers all across the United States. I must have 100 copies of this story. And my staff was very concerned because the story began, former Vice President Al Gore announced in Nigeria yesterday, quote, "My wife Tipper and I have opened a low-cost family restaurant named Shoney's, and we are running it ourselves." Before I could get back to the U.S., the late-night television comedians that we have, Jay Leno, David Letterman, perhaps you've heard of them. Sometimes they're just not funny. They had already had a field day with this. One of them had me in a big white chef's hat. My wife was yelling at me as she was scribbling, "One more burger with fries." 3 days later, I got a nice, long, handwritten letter from my friend and former partner, Bill Clinton, who spoke to you by satellite 2 days ago. The letter said, "Congratulations on the new restaurant, Al." We like to celebrate each other's successes in life. And now I am a recovering politician, and I'm reminded in coming here, it does seem like a lot of time has passed. Not long ago, I was in a restaurant in Los Angeles with one of my business partners, and this point was driven home when a woman walked in front of the table where I was sitting, just staring at me as she walked past. And I didn't think anything about it until a few moments later, from the corner of my eye, I saw her coming from the opposite direction. And she was just staring at me as she walked past. So I thought I should look up, and I said, "How do you do?" And she said, "You know, if you dyed your hair black, you would look just like Al Gore." And I said, "Thank you, ma'am." "You sound like him, too," she said. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had a wonderful experience here in India the last couple of days, and I'm deeply grateful to India today for making this entire visit a reality. I've been looking forward to this event this evening, and I've enjoyed the interviews and conversations. It's been really a wonderful experience all around, and I was grateful also to have the chance to spend a couple of hours with your Prime Minister. I was very impressed with the conversation we enjoyed. Dr. Pachauri and I addressed the Parliament yesterday. That too went extremely well. And for the last couple of days, I have led a training program, training 100 men and women from all across India in ways to effectively present several hundred slides about the climate crisis as it affects India. And I was thinking of this, of course, when you gave me the topic about leadership in the 21st century. And to me, there is a striking contrast between the confidence and dynamism and success and legendary energy and drive of modern India, soon to be the largest nation in the world, already one of the world's preeminent leaders in areas as diverse as information technology and pharmaceutical, steel, and other areas of business where your entrepreneurial spirit harnessed to the outstanding human resources improved by the commitment and budgetary investments in higher education of decades ago, and the leadership that you have, particularly in the business community, to produce an incredible success story. All of that stands in some contrast to the position that India and most other countries in our world today have where the issue of the climate crisis is concerned. Defining India's opportunities, obligations, responsibilities, and challenges in terms of other countries seems at odds with the independent drive and spirit that India demonstrates in virtually every other area. I talk about this issue here with some great caution, merely because I am painfully aware that the single largest emitter of global warming pollution, the nation that simultaneously has the single greatest capacity for leadership, innovation, and the development of solutions to this crisis is my own country, which is also the country that has done the least in international fora to assist in the formation of a global agreement that's necessary and a prerequisite to solving this problem. We have done a lot in the United States, and states particularly, and city governments, more than 800 of them, have taken initiatives that actually have resulted in some meaningful reductions in global warming pollution. But the United States should be providing leadership. And it is not news of any sort for me or others to note that we are not. But I mention this only to make certain that you are aware that I'm aware that I speak from a position of disadvantage, and I do so knowingly because of my respect for India and because of my desire to speak candidly about what I truly believe is an unparalleled opportunity for this nation to take its rightful place in the top rank of leadership for the world of the 21st century. These are thoughts that your topic, given to me some time ago, provoked. I also believe that the opportunity that is contained in the climate crisis is far more important than the danger it presents. Some of you know what is by now a cliche that the kanji characters shared by the written form of Chinese and Japanese express the concept we call crisis in English with two characters that are sometimes interpreted in the following way. The first can be said to represent danger, and the second can be said to represent opportunity. And I do believe that is a more sophisticated way of expressing the concept of crisis, because in every crisis there is a tendency to focus on the danger, but in every crisis there is also hidden sometimes in plain view, great opportunity. But in order to seize that opportunity, one has to walk through the danger and summon the moral courage to face it down and then seek out the opportunity. What are the opportunities inherent in this climate crisis? India and the world as a whole face challenges for which the world has not yet developed adequate responses. The world as a whole is beset by the HIV/AIDS pandemic, by the destruction of forest areas, the rapid depletion of ocean fisheries, an extinction crisis that on a statistical basis is actually on par with the 5 previous great extinction events that the scientists tell us date back hundreds of millions of years. The previous one being associated with a giant asteroid hitting the Earth, credited with wiping out the dinosaurs, and this time there is no asteroid, there is us. And we are colliding, in a sense, with the ecological system of the planet. I recall slow-motion video images of automobiles being tested for safety, crashed into brick walls, with the video slowed down to show the crumpling of the front of the car and then the passenger compartment. When I read the scientific reports from Dr. Pachauri and his colleagues about the loss of valuable portions of the web of life upon which we depend, I have this image of a slow-motion crumpling. This collision between humanity and the ecology of the planet represents a radical transformation in the relationship between people and the earth, one that has come about rather suddenly. We are now all of a sudden, in the cliche term, the bull in the china shop. We seem to be capable of doing casual damage without fully realizing it or intending to do it. Our footprint, in the metaphor of the day, is larger. And this new relationship comes from a combination of 3 factors. First of all, our absolute numbers have increased dramatically and continue to increase. 10,000 generations of people lived on this earth before we reached an aggregate population of 2 billion. That, around the time my generation was born. In my lifetime, the population has gone from a little over 2 billion to 6.7 billion. And my generation will see the number reach above 9 billion. This is not a place to search for solutions to the climate crisis, because thankfully, improvements in the way we understand the importance of education and healthcare and the empowerment of women have already led to dramatic changes that are causing a stabilization of population. Much more is known now than even 20 years ago about why family size declines. In nation after nation, they have done the analyses and proven that there are 4 factors, all of which must be present in some degree. The first and most important is the education of girls. The second, related to the first, is the empowerment of women. The third, I see a distinct pattern in the applause of these first 2 factors. Come on, men. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The third is the availability in culturally acceptable ways of fertility control, family planning. And the fourth, sometimes overlooked in the context of population dynamics, is an increase in child survival rates. An African leader 60 years ago, Julius K. Nyerere, said that the most powerful contraceptive in the world is the confidence on the part of parents that their children will survive. When girls are educated and women are empowered and have the means to participate effectively in the choice on family size and have the confidence along with their partners that their children will survive, they choose to have smaller families. That's true everywhere in the world. Individuals make different choices and must be allowed to do so, of course, but the pattern is now very clear. Nevertheless, even though population is stabilizing and moving from one equilibrium state to another, from high birth rates and high death rates to low birth rates and low death rates, and even though every nation is at some point along that transitional curve, it is an important part of the explanation for why we suddenly find ourselves in this unfamiliar position, capable of doing such destructive harm without really meaning to do so. The pure pressure of population on resources is a big part of the new reality that we have to absorb and take account of. The second factor, after population, is far more important: the scientific and technological revolution, which is putting into the hands of human beings technologies thousands, even millions of times more powerful than any our grandparents or great-grandparents could have imagined. We have the privilege to be joined this evening by Craig Venter, one of the greatest scientists in history, a real pioneer in the completion of the human genome. And genetics is only one of many fields where the secrets of the universe are being unlocked by the cleverest among us, giving us tools for good or ill, and thankfully most are being used for good, but some have side effects, and I don't speak about genomics in this regard particularly, although the danger is there as well, as Craig has also said. But think of the powerful technologies for war. Alfred Nobel thought that dynamite would be an instrument of peace and would lead to an end to conflict. It was used for other purposes. Many of the technologies that we initially pursue to improve life turn out to have other uses as well. And some of the technologies that are now available to us for the exploitation of natural resources are being used with such abandon that the consequences have added up to a powerful destructive pattern. Let me just pick one example. Ocean fisheries. The nets that people have used for thousands of years harvest the bounty of the sea and leave the engines of its productivity intact. But it is now possible to pull nets that are 70, 80 kilometers long, dragging along the bottom, vacuuming up every living thing in vast areas of the ocean, throwing away 90% of it killed for nothing in order to make profit on the 10% that can be taken to market. This is insane. It is, over time, suicidal. And it is only one example. The destruction of the forests. The casual destruction of all these living species that I mentioned earlier.